Jennifer Lee Morgan is the special envoy for international climate action from the German government. You might know her as the head of Greenpeace International. It's the first time here in Washington in her new role just ahead of the G7 summit. Jennifer, thank you so much for making time for Deutsche Welle.
Great to see you.
You started with high hopes to push forward a climate-oriented foreign policy. What is left of that in the time of war?
There's still a lot left in a time of war. I mean, obviously, the Russian aggression and working for peace is a top priority, but this war has taught us how dangerous it is to be so dependent on fossil fuels. And so we are working very hard to phase out, of course, Russian fossil fuels, but also all fossil fuels. And to do that, we're accelerating our energy transformation to renewable energy and energy efficiency and working around the world to get others to do the same. And that's a big part of international climate politics and policy.
You're here in Washington. Obviously, the Biden administration also started really strong on fighting the climate catastrophe. They even had a climate czar, or put a climate czar in place. How did the war in Ukraine change the whole discussion here in the United States when it comes to renewable energy?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think in the United States, on the one hand, you know, as in Germany, one sees, okay, with renewable energy, you're quite independent actually from others. But the United States has a lot of fossil fuels. And I think what's happened here is that instead of moving more quickly, I mean, the president is trying to move quickly to renewable energy, you see the very large interests of fossil fuels working now in this moment of disruption to try and use it to get more fossil fuels out of the ground and build long-term fossil fuel infrastructure. And that's really the crossroads that we're in right now. So do countries like the United States and Germany and Europe, we're going in that direction, move more into secure renewable energy, or do they lock in long-term fossil fuels? And obviously in Washington, there's a lot of interests working to lock in long-term fossil fuels.
Do you have a conversation with the government here?
I think that the president, from everything I understand, remains very committed on climate change and is trying to get something done through Congress on climate and renewable energy. But obviously the pressures are huge. It's hugely concerning at the same time if the United States moves more into fossil fuel exploration when we know and scientists tell us that that's actually what we cannot do at this moment. It requires just tremendous leadership. But I also have met with many here, civil society groups, think tanks, companies as well, who want to move in and are building the base of support for a cleaner energy future. But this is this crossroads that we're in right now. But yeah, am I worried? Absolutely.
Is there any chance that Europe or Germany and Europe are getting prepared for a United States which is kind of leaving the climate commitment again?
Well, I think, we've been there once, and it was very detrimental, I think, on the one hand, on the global level, but I think what we learned through the years when President Trump was in office, who was a climate denier, was how much we can work with other actors. So working with mayors, working with those that want to move forward, and having exchanges that are happening between our countries.
Ahead of the G7 meeting in Germany, many people demand that Germany and other rich countries do more to support the global south in moving towards renewable energy. What can we expect from Germany to do?
First, we need to all do more. We all agreed in Glasgow to increase our ambition, more renewable energy, bringing in methane, other greenhouse gases. So we pledged to do that. And that obviously is a big signal to other countries, major emerging economies, that they need to do the same. And for developing countries, we've committed to really move forward on our climate finance to meet the commitments that we have made, which are still outstanding, which is of great concern to developing countries, but also to double our funding for adaptation and to really start engaging on these issues of loss and damage. You know, what happens? What happens when an island loses all its home? The G7 is committed to really move forward actively on that conversation and send the signal that we're going to stand in solidarity.
But that would be my question. Sending out a signal is nice. Talking about it is wonderful. Kind of paying condolences if someone dies, or hundreds or thousands of people are dying in floods and droughts all around the world. But what precisely is Germany going to suggest there at the G7 summit?
So I think Germany specifically is looking at a few things. So first of all, indeed, saying that we are going to be supporting countries in their transition away from coal, or looking to do that. We're in negotiations with a number of countries right now from the Global South on how to do that. So I think how we support those countries is a topic right now that's being negotiated. I think the other thing is how we can be driving the decarbonization of the industrial sector, so steel, cement, et cetera, and the foundation of interest of a climate club or a group of countries that are moving forward, not only the G7 countries, but offering a hand also, obviously, to developing countries that want to join and looking to see how we can support them in doing that. And then really committing to double down on these financial commitments. So it's not just a signal, it's actually, okay, how are we going to meet that 100 billion commitment that was made so long ago by developed countries?
So this, you say, is still a top priority for the German government for the G7 summit?
Yes, absolutely. I think the climate issue, the climate crisis, is a top priority for the G7. Obviously, other issues around food security, obviously the Russian aggression and how we're working together to support Ukraine towards peace are key issues, but climate is still at that top table.
Jennifer Morgan, how does it make you feel when you see a green energy minister talking about going back to coal and maybe even going back to nuclear energy?
How it makes me feel, I think I'd start with how I feel when he talks about the importance of accelerating the energy transition, the 500-page bill that's in front of the Parliament to do that, all of the very detailed measures that we can meet an 80% renewable energy target by 2030. And I think his honesty about the fact that this is a bitter pill, but that we have to basically make sure that we have the ability to have our citizens safe and secure moving in the coming months is understandable. I think it's responsible, but also, his commitment to continue our commitment to phase out coal. By aiming for that 2030 goal, that makes me feel as if we are being responsible, that we are sticking with our climate goals, which is one of my main messages here in the United States, but that hasn't gone away, but that we also have, we are in an acute, extreme situation that we need to negotiate around, and therefore we have in this short time period to look at how we make sure that we are energy secure.
How much is the former government, the Merkel administration, to be blamed for that situation Germany is in?
Well, I think certainly we've learned that having such a high dependency on one country for so much of our energy is not good policy making. It has set up immense vulnerabilities. So now this government is working to change that and also to learn from it, that we just can't be that dependent. We're taking that responsibility very seriously while also keeping climate at the top of our agenda. But no, it wasn't an easy situation to come into.
Jennifer Morgan, you took the plunge from activism to policy, to a policymaker. Is this the way to go from calling for responsibility to actually taking responsibility?
Well, I think when an opportunity arises as an activist, and I still consider myself, I call myself, I guess, an activist diplomat now, to come in and work for someone like Minister Baerbock to make change in the world and be a decision maker, that's something that, an opportunity that you just have to jump into. And I'm honored to be here. I'm trying to do my best to try and move us forward and make the decisions that will propel us into a zero carbon world.
Last question, what has been the most painful part from shifting from activism into politics?
When you make a shift like this from kind of outside being an activist into being a decision maker, I think, I don't know if I would call it painful, but I think the intensity of the responsibility is greater. At Greenpeace, when I led Greenpeace and worked for other NGOs, I always felt a responsibility to our supporters, of course, who funded us to do things. But as a member of a government, really making decisions, I feel a much greater sense of responsibility to the tasks that I've been given and to the people who I'm representing. And that's that I carry with me every day.
Jennifer Lee Morgan, thank you so much for your time, and let's keep this conversation going.
Would love to. Thank you so much.